This particular podcast is centered around the concept of MBAs in the modern day. With COVID having fast forwarded culture and fast forwarded professional requirements in the modern world, I think that this is one of the most important podcasts that we've ever created in the journey of this show. We're hosting Pratham Mittal, who's the founder of Masters Union. Now, Masters Union is an organization that helps place people in professional organizations. But here's the catch. Now, what if you don't have to go to a top business school to still earn a higher pay package than many IIM pay packages, than many B school pay packages in India? The nature of MBAs, the nature of what's required in professional environments has completely changed, especially after the COVID-19 pandemic, where culture has been fast forwarded, professions have been fast forwarded, and the requirements of the world have been fast forwarded. This is one of the most important episodes of the year. We're hosting Pratham Mittal, the founder of Masters Union, a company which specializes in providing extremely high pay packages to the students that pass through the Masters Union courses. Very insightful conversation, one of the most intelligent, spunky guests we've had on the show. I enjoyed the heck out of this open, fun, and insightful podcast. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Remember, guys, follow the Ranveer Show on Spotify. Every episode's available on Spotify 48 hours before it's available anywhere else in the world because we are a Spotify exclusive now. If you've ever considered doing an MBA in your life, if you're considering doing an MBA in your life, if any of your friends are considering doing MBAs in India in order to earn more money, let's talk about money. Let's talk about the skills required to earn that money. And let's hear it from one of the leaders in the EdTech space in India, Pratham Mittal, on the Ranveer Show. Pratham Mittal, I'm pumped about this podcast, dude. There's certain pieces where I know it's gonna go up to 2 hours because you have that much to offer.
Awesome. Okay.
And before I actually get into the details of who you are, everything that you've seen, everything that you're doing, everything you've done, I want to know a very simple detail, which is that your current project, okay, Masters Union, you're trying to get people higher pay packages than they'd get when they go to traditional colleges.
Sure, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, and let's kind of just put it out there for the podcast audience first, and then we'll get into your story and all your experiences and everything else.
Awesome. Yeah, Masters Union is a business school, right? And we offer courses just like an MBA program, some online programs as well. And the idea is that can we get our students, our graduates, better pay packages than they can get elsewhere?
Even in IIMs.
Even than IIMs, right? So when we set up ourselves, we said that, hey, let's compete with the best in the country, right? And if we can sort of, match the best in the country and try surpassing them, then we would have created something very beautiful, right? So our metric that we track for ourselves is how much are our graduates earning. I know it's not all about the money, I understand that, but it's also a good metric to see how well we are doing, right? As compared to the rest of the world.
Are you comfortable putting out some numbers?
I mean, it's like public information now. So yeah, sure. So our MBA students just graduated last year. And the average pay package that our graduates got was approximately 29.12 lakhs, right? And the recruiters included Bain, BCG, McKinsey, Microsoft, all the tier 1 names.
Wow.
That erstwhile or otherwise would have only gone to an IIM Bangalore, Ahmedabad, or Calcutta, or maybe ISB, right? So for them to come to us was a huge step for them as well. And for our students to make it to those brands was again, life-changing for them. So that was the one golden number.
Crazy, dude. Very unrelated question, but how are you so happy, dude? You're one of the happiest guys we've brought
I think
on the
it's
show.
your energy, bro. It's your energy.
No, there's something up with you. Like you're a happy
Maybe
dude.
there's something in this.
No, but what is this source of happiness?
Yeah, I think when you're in a people's business, right? I mean, education is something that is a very human business, right? We're not building some software. We're not running these campaigns. We are like literally working with students the entire time. And you have to just exude this positive energy. Only then the students will sort of absorb that. And then just, and happiness, pursuit of happiness is something that defines everything in life. I think so. because it's a people's business, I think that's how I've just become. My parents were also educators, and I think it's just something I get from them. If you meet my parents, you'll be like,
They're the same?
They're the same, yeah.
Wow. Dude, so we pretty much did a mini podcast right outside before we started this one. And I can't wait to take all that information and also put it into this particular episode. But you mentioned something very cool about your dad, especially. You said that in the movie The Founder, which is about the McDonald's founder, the protagonist was the salesperson, was very proactive. So that's pretty much your dad's story. Starting out with a mithai ki dukaan, then moving on to an automobile business, then getting into the education space. And you're the second gen, like taking it forward. And I'm 110% sure, jitna I've read your energy till now, you also have that hustler, sales, communication energy. So why don't you share some of that, dude? Because I'm sure you weren't always this guy, and it's probably been the last 10 years of post-college life that's turned you into this.
Yeah. I think, so I grew up in Jalandhar, right? Which is a very small town. And thereafter, my parents, for good or for bad, sent me to a school in Dehradun, right? And
the Doon School.
The Doon School, correct.
Crazy.
And in that school, we had kids from all over the country, right? From Bangalore, from Delhi, from Gurgaon, Bombay, right? And I was the kid from the small town. And so when I came in, I was so underconfident, right? I was so insecure about life in general because these kids could speak English like flawlessly. And I couldn't, right? They had this sense of like, togetherness because they all were from big cities and they relate to each other. I couldn't, right? And a lot of the times I was just like, kya baatein kar rahe hain yaar ye log? Like, meko samajh hi nahi aa raha hai kuch. And then I would be the one trying to sort of like fit in, right? But what I realized later, like as I sort of lived through that school experience, was that I got very good at swimming, right? I did fine in like academics, right? So I realized that, hey, listen, like I can also find my calling and I can also be someone who can compete with these kids, right? And I think after that realization that I am nobody less, right? I think that just stuck with me like for the rest of my life, right? So when I went to college in the US, right? I was very fortunate. So I went to University of Pennsylvania, where the Wharton School is, right? And there when I went, again, I was from India, from a small town, Dehradun, right? And there were kids from like New York, from LA, like your Beverly Hills and, your, sons and daughters of politicians, all of this stuff. And there again, I would have felt the same way had I not had this realization earlier. And when I was there, I was like, hey, listen, like I can be these guys. Like I don't have to feel lesser, right? And that confidence that you get, I think it just makes you so sure of yourself that you can put out yourself in like more difficult situations. And you never think twice before going into like outside of your comfort zone.
There's something about guys I've met who've gone to the Doon School. I don't know what it is. There's a school in Mumbai called St. Mary's, and there's a similar kind of vibe in them. But it's something about the schooling you get at the Doon School, like great communication skills, high levels of confidence. What's the word for it when you're like entrepreneurial? Enterprising.
Sure.
Like that kind of enterprising nature. What goes on in that school, dude? Why is there such a different energy?
I don't know if I can say this for all of my friends. No, I think it's the fact that you're on your own.
Okay.
Right.
So give some context about Doon School.
Sure. So Doon School is this boarding school which is like built on a 70-acre hill in the middle of Dehradun, right? And people come there when they're in grade 7 or grade 8 and they stay till they're grade 12, right? Those 5 years, they are on their own, right? Because before that, they had their parents taking care of them. They had their, little bubble. But when they come to Doon School, they are in the wild, right? You will get bullied. You will bully people. You will get bad grades. You will top the class. You go through such a breadth of experiences, right? You will get hockey shots when you lose a hockey match, right?
What does that mean?
A hockey shot. Use your imagination.
Okay.
It's incredibly competitive. You have houses, you have inter-house competitions, right? You're exposed to every sport possible. So in that sport, you lose, you'll win, you'll build a skill. So when you go through such a sine curve in your life, which you otherwise would not have in your normal life, at home, I think you just become very sure of what you have to offer to the world. You find your place in the world. Right. And the way good communication is just one manifestation of it. Right. I think other manifestations are taking risks.
Okay.
Right. I think a lot of my friends, I would say that they are very attuned to like taking risks. They won't think twice. They'll be more spontaneous. They'll be, more sort of, high energy, right? As compared to my friends who, perhaps did not go to a boarding school.
Do you also pick up shit about like other people you meet? Like, do you also pick up, like, are you able to read people better?
No, so I think there's a very interesting concept called mirroring,
Okay.
right?
Which we're doing right now.
I think so, right? So you become the other person, right? So if I'm talking to you, I subliminally understand what Ranveer wants to hear and what kind of a person Ranveer wants me to be, and I become that person.
Let's pause away from this conversation. What is that? If you break up, like if you had to scan what I am, what I want you to be, what is all that according to you?
I think when you met me outside, right? I expected that you want me to be high energy. You want me to be talking about certain aspects of certain things. I've seen some of your videos. I know what you enjoy, right? And also very quickly, as you were talking about things in the first 2-3 minutes, I probably subliminally understood what kind of a person you are.
Which is
I think someone who wants to sort of go deeper than layer one. So there are a lot of people who talk layer one, right? Okay, what is the weather like? What is this like? What is that like? Right? Where did you go to school? You asked me where I went to school 25 minutes into our conversation. Most people would ask me that in the first 30 seconds, right? In fact, in the last 60 minutes that we were having dinner, you didn't ask me about what I do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I was thinking, yaar, isko pata bhi hai main kya karta hu, like interview mein kya puchega? But because we were already at layer 3, right? We were talking about dopamine levels, and we were talking about like why people behave a certain way, and we were talking about arranged marriage and all of that stuff, right? And I think I realized that if I have to talk to this guy and if I have to impress this guy, I have to really go layer 2, layer 3, and sort of challenge him, right? So I must have asked you some questions. Ki, aise tune kyun kiya? Why did you do this? And you asked me the same thing back, right? So I realized that both of us are mirroring each other.
Mine's an outcome of podcasting, dude. Like what probably you got from Doon School and the education you got in college, from my age 18 to age 22, I was in a pretty average engineering college, and I always felt like I was missing out on the education that my peers were getting from being abroad. And I was right. That's what hurts me, bro. And I had to unlearn shit like in the first few years of my career.
You've done a very good job.
Oh, fuck. Oh, God, dude. There were some blessings of that college. I found my co-founder there. I found my early teammates there.
Nice.
But I think when an Indian kid from anywhere in India goes abroad, there is this edge that they gain. And I've heard parents say shit like, yo, the education abroad isn't much better than India or anything, but there is some kind of an edge that people gain, which is why I actually want to ask you about Wharton. All my life, my relatives told me, don't aim for Wharton. When you're thinking of your MBA, go for Wharton, go for UPenn. What is that? Like, I haven't gone there. I can't go there right now because of work.
Yeah.
I don't intend on. Give me the 4 years in a paragraph.
Yeah. So, and this is, I'll challenge what you said here, right?
Sure.
I think it's less about going to UPenn or Wharton or a school in the US. I think it's about going to a zone where you're not comfortable and where you don't know people, right? So I grew up in Jalandhar and Dehradun. I think had I come to Bombay, or had I gone to Bangalore for my education, I think I would have had a similar experience and similarly enriching experience that I had in the US. Because I would be thrown out of my comfort zone and I'll have to make friends from scratch. I'll have to learn things from scratch. I'll have to understand the culture from scratch. And all those things would teach me concepts like mirroring, all of those, right? So I think it's not about the US. It's not about good colleges. I think it's about being outside of your comfort zone. However, I will still talk about what it is that colleges in the US and top colleges in the US give you that perhaps other colleges don't.
Sure.
Right?
This is Ivy League.
Correct. The Ivy
Give
League.
some context on what Ivy League is.
Sure. So in the US, there are 8 colleges which are the top. Those 8 form like 8 of the top 10 colleges in the US, right?
Possibly in the world. Some of the top ones. In the
Yeah,
world.
I mean, if you remove Oxford, Cambridge, then sure, right? So it's like Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Penn, 4 others. And these colleges basically got named the Ivy League because they have a sports competition that takes place every year called the Ivy League.
This is great branding.
Great branding, right? Yeah, think about it. So, Khelo India. So that's how these 8 colleges sort of build their brand. And I think what is significantly different about these 8 colleges is, number one, that these are multidisciplinary institutions, right? So my roommate was someone who was a doctor, who was studying medicine, right? A roommate in another year was someone who was like hardcore finance, right? Another year was someone who was a material scientist, right? Another year was somebody who was 8 years older than me, had already done his PhD in physics from Harvard, and then God spoke to him and told him, listen, physics is not for you. You can't help the world with your physics research. You should development economics. So he left his PhD in the middle. He was on a Nobel laureate path. He left his physics in the middle, came to Penn, and started doing his development economics ka PhD, right? So you meet these different kind of people who ask you very interesting questions, right?
What do you mean?
So when we are hanging out with friends, right, and friends we are comfortable with, friends are childhood friends, they will not challenge us, right? They know us, we know them, we know what floats their boat, they know what floats our boat, right? And so the conversation we'll be having is layer 1, layer 2 conversations. We'll never have deep conversations because there's nothing different about us. There's nothing interesting about you that I get.
Yeah.
So when I was in a conversation with Peter, my friend who's from Bahamas, the PhD student I was telling you about, we met on a pool. He was swimming, I was swimming. And we stopped in the same, the lap, right? And then we started talking to each other. And I didn't realize where 20 minutes went. The first question he asked me, oh, Pratham, so why did you leave India to come to college in the US? India does not have good colleges. Imagine that question. Would our childhood friend ask us that question? Probably not, right? And then another one of my friends who I met, right, Randy, who became my business partner, his question is like, Pratham, why do you want to start a company? Right? The company that we eventually ended up starting. And I was like, because I want to start it. He's like, no. Tell me, why do you want to start a company? Right? What is your motivation? Because if I'm partnering with you, I want to do this for life. Right? And so he asked me like 5 chains of why. Why do you want to do this? Then I would answer like, I want to do this because, I want to make money. He's like, why do you want to make money? What is your motivation? I want to make my parents proud. Why do you want to make your parents proud? Right? So I think these people challenge you in different ways. I think so. Diversity, I think, is what makes these places very, very effective.
And the challenges are what allow conversations to dive to deep layers, dude. Honestly.
Correct.
Side note, I saw Gehraiya yesterday, dude. I was at the screening.
Okay.
I recommend that movie to everyone. It's one of the darkest movies I've seen, and it's extremely layered. Extremely layered. Are you into movies?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
What's like a crazy mind movie you've seen which has like challenged you?
Like Shutter Island.
Yeah, Shutter Island, right? Because there were layers.
Yeah.
I won't say Gehraiya is in the same zone at all. It's not a psychological thriller.
Sure.
But it has that same effect of questioning your own childhood, questioning your own whys, your own
motivations.
It's also the way the movie shot, you kind of feel like you're there and you put yourself in that position and ask yourself, what would I do in this situation? Would I cheat on my partner if someone was making those kind of advances at me?
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's the movie starts with infidelity.
Spoiler alert, guys.
No. Everyone knows it's about infidelity.
Okay.
But it goes into like this hyper dark place about the past and generally human relationships and money and all sorts of places.
Oh, wow.
It's just an experiment in human darkness. And I mean, at the time of recording this, the movie is not out.
Achha.
And I sincerely hope that people receive it well. But
amazing.
Highly recommended.
Yeah.
But speaking about those challenges, when we say we like mind-f***ing movies, that's basically what the movie is doing to us. What is mind? It's making you question the reality you knew. That's the only way to go deeper into conversation. That's the only way to go deeper into relationships, not just romantic. It could be friendships, whatever. And it's the only way you can like kind of pinch out self-growth from yourself, dude. You have to. That's the logic of surrounding yourself with people who are better than you in some ways.
It's like intellectual masturbation.
Yeah, exactly. But speaking more about Wharton, specifically Wharton, UPenn, what is the education like there, dude? Like, I mean, see, everyone knows how Indian teachers would teach us in colleges. It's usually, okay, this is what's in the textbook. These are the points. Some of the good teachers, they go slightly deeper into the points, but that's very rare. There'll be like 1 or 2 teachers every semester.
Correct.
Okay. Now, what happens in UPenn, in Wharton, in Ivy League colleges? Are the professors really like top notch? Like, do they make you question yourself? Do they force you to go deeper?
I'll be very honest here, and this is 4 years of me studying there, and then comparing that to my experience in India, it's no different at all. The teaching in an Ivy League and a teaching in an Indian tier 2, tier 3 college, beyond a point, it's no different at all.
Wow, really?
Truly.
So,
truly.
Are you paying all that money for your kid to go and meet other intelligent people? Is that
exactly? That's about it. I think you pay for a club membership. Right? Because the content that they're giving you is no different from the content that is available on YouTube, that is available on Coursera, that is available in India in any college. I was surprised they even prescribed the same books. Right? It's no different.
So the parents who are forcing urban kids to get into Ivy League colleges are actually doing it for their own sense of status in some forms, that my kid went to this Ivy League college.
Well, I'm sure that's part of the motivation. But the other thing is that what actually does work is that when they go there, the peer group that they meet I think that is what they're paying for, right? It's not the teachers. Believe me, it's not the teachers. It's not the curriculum. It's just that you're surrounded by people who are incredibly curious, right? They're ambitious and they're high achieving, right? And they have a good sense of common sense, and they will challenge you, right? That's what you're paying for. You're paying for people who, it's a club membership. I really believe it's a club membership.
I'm not trying to suck on my own dick here,
Yeah.
but can a podcast in the long term with the right guests simulate that Ivy League college experience?
I think so. I mean, we're already going so deep in the conversation, but yes, like if the relationship that you build with your guests, transcends beyond this 1 hour, 2 hour session, and then you continue to explore those gairaiyan with those with those guests of yours, then yes.
What about for the listeners? If they stick to like a few podcasts where you go extremely deep, I mean, where the host goes extremely deep with multiple guests, are you sort of getting some form of higher education according to you?
I think that's passive. It's not active, right?
Okay.
When you're listening to two people talk, so you can absorb it, sure, but you're not actively engaged in it. Your hypothalamus is not as it's not buzzing with activity, right? So I think what you can do, if let's say you're in a tier 3 city and you're stuck there for whatever reason, right? You cannot go to an Ivy League, you cannot go to Bangalore, you cannot go. What I would suggest is meet people who are most unlike you, right? Even if it's your house help's son or daughter, right? Even if it's your driver, even if it's and just try to have a conversation with them, right? And try to explore some depth with them. I think it'll not be too different. It'll not be too different, right? Just make friends on Instagram, like message people who you're inspired by, talk to them, say just 30 minutes of your time. Like, I mean, I have people who message me on Instagram. It's like, just let's talk for 30 minutes, right? And I love that.
Man, what you're saying is advice I wish someone had given me when I was 21, 22. If someone had just told me what you just said, it would have changed a lot for me between 22 to when I started the podcast, which is 26. Growth would have been faster. That explore depths with people. But coming back to these colleges, is there like a one-off professor who's just like some sort of...
Yes.
So talk about those one-off professors also.
So there was this one professor. His name is Adam Grant. I'm sure you've heard of him.
Yeah.
Very popular on YouTube and Instagram. The way he used to teach was different, right? And he's a one-off professor, right? And every university, every college, every student has this one-off professor who he talks about. So this is my guy.
What's the context on, like the subject and all?
He used to teach organizational behavior.
Okay.
So how organizations work, right? Okay. So basically how to motivate your teams and how to make sure that, they're behaving a certain way, how to negotiate with your business partner, right? How to do it in a way. So it's basically about leadership and how to live your life, but it's called organizational behavior, right? So the way he used to teach us was, the 2 or 3 things, right? And I haven't answered this question before ever, so I'm going to just sort of think it out loud. First is that the professor has an aura, right? The professor inspires you, right? And he asks you a question and you want to be the first one to answer that question, right? So he builds this rapport with you, right? Where you're studying to impress. Right? And that's a great motivator. Think about it. मेरे को इस professor को बस impress करना है because वो अमिताभ बच्चन है. Right? So they build that aura around them that makes people want to just sort of impress. That's number 1. Number 2 is they don't teach anything. Right? What they will do is they will tickle you to think yourself, right? They will tickle you to get curious. So, in one of the classes, he's like, how will you strike a deal with someone you are doing business with in a way that you're also happy and that other person is also happy? Like, how will you create a win-win, right? The way he will put off that question, right? He put across a question in the classroom. He'll be like, now I want to know this answer, right? Now, I am in pursuit of the answer. He just tickled me a little bit. He did not teach. He did not preach. He did not say step 1A, step 1B, step 1C. ऐसा नहीं बोला. He just asked a question in a way that was inspiring me, and now I want to go and find out the answer, right? Now, how will I go find out the answer? I will go, see research on YouTube. I will read the book. I will talk to friends. I will investigate, right? So I think good professors will just make you curious about the subject, right? They will throw off some statistic, and you'll be like, whoa, wow, really? अच्छा ऐसे होता है? Shit, now I have to figure this out, right? They'll make you uncomfortable, right? And then you'll want to sort of, they'll jar you. They'll, if you're like a straight line, they'll put you like somewhere here, and then you have to figure out how to come back on that straight line. I think that's what Does that make sense? I mean,
Yeah,
I'm just sort of
I get what you're
thinking
saying.
out loud.
It's an approach that is not just reading out textbooks,
Right.
and instead, so it's kind of an inception approach. Basically, when you're trying to convince someone, rather than telling them to do something, you convince them that that thing that they should do, they should be doing anyway.
Correct.
It's a technique used to actually persuade people that rather than selling you this cup, I'll say that, yo, dude, I wish you had a great cup to drink coffee in.
Let me explain. I have an example. So there's a professor at Masters Union, right? He teaches accounting. And do you think accounting is one of the most boring courses ever? I think most people will agree, right?
Yeah.
And so this professor took it upon himself. I want to make accounting exciting, right? So what he did was he said he allotted the class is 60 people, right? So he allotted in groups of 6 each, 10 groups. To each group, he allotted one local business, right? A local business could be an Uber driver, could be a dhaba, could be anybody, right? And what he told them is that, okay, now you guys figure out a way. Okay, this Uber driver has a business, but he doesn't have books of accounts. This dhaba is a business, but he doesn't have books of accounts, right? This like local shop, mom and pop store, like Kirana Dukan, has a business, doesn't have books of accounts. Now, whatever you've learned, right, which I taught you in the first couple of hours, and I gave you some videos to you. Now you guys will go and become the accountant for these small businesses and put their books in order. And then you will tell me how putting the books in order actually improved their business. Okay. Now imagine the student, right? Earlier the student was like, accounting kya hai? Yaar, ye kya line banate rehte hain? Aap to sir. But as soon as the student realized what accounting actually did for those businesses, right? So one of the accounting class, one of the Uber driver project, what they found out after they did the analytics and they put the invoices, all of that, they realized that this Uber driver actually earns more between 3 and 6 p.m. Right? Because at between 3 and 6 p.m. he's close to his like lunch place where he gets the maximum, like most rewarding rides. Right? They took out that insight from an accounting book and they told the Uber driver, bro, listen, you stay here the entire day. Uber driver's revenue increased like 2-3 fold just because of that darn insight, right? And now the guy's like, okay, accounting is important. I need to figure this out. I need to use this in my own business, or I need to use this in whatever I do in the future. That's the way this professor taught us as well.
So my next question to you is this, honestly. What I've figured after working across industries is that if you're someone who can get the job done without bothering your management or whoever your boss is, you are a valuable part of the team. And it's likely that the more you do it, the more promotions you will get. That's basically the logic of promotions and higher pay packages. That make your management and your team's life easier. Right? Now you're saying that the students at Masters Union get higher pay packages than IMA. And what I feel you're basically doing is you're teaching them this logic in many ways that become useful people and the money will follow.
Correct.
What goes into creating a useful person that say you're doing better than I am? And what's happening at IIM? If you have context, I don't have any context on what they actually teach at IIM, including the subjects. I have no idea what's taught in MBA colleges.
Let me put it this way.
And I'm asking you this from the perspective that you're someone who's kind of deep diving into EdTech, your family's in education, so you have some other perspective on education. Go.
You know, which are the most successful colleges in India?
IIT, IIM.
No, actually. Okay, let me rephrase the question. Which colleges do you think give their students the best outcomes in terms of jobs, right?
I would say the same.
Actually, no, it's all MBBS colleges. Right? All MBBS colleges, doctors graduate from those MBBS colleges and they all find very good jobs, very high paying jobs eventually, right? Interesting thing about medical colleges is that a medical college is always situated next to a medical hospital, right? And when you're being trained as a medical student, you're actually working in the hospital. You're taking classes in the morning, but you're training in a real hospital in the evening, number one. Number two, the people who are teaching you medicine are not professors, they are doctors. They are doctors who are teaching in the morning and doing surgeries in the evening, right? So what you learn in the college is extremely hands-on. It's what you will be doing once you graduate, right? That's why our medical colleges do an amazing job, right, of making students employable. Now let's go to an engineering college or to an MBA college. Is an MBA college situated next to the industry? Never. It's usually situated far away from the city. The teachers in the MBA college, are they people who have run companies before? No, they are people who are professors who have only taught their entire lives and perhaps have never worked in the industry, right? And that is the problem with education. in the US, in India, wherever, right? That our teachers are people who have not themselves worked in the industry. There are some teachers definitely who have that exposure, and I think they teach really well, much better than the others. But by and large, people who have not worked in the industry, I feel that they might not be able to teach as well. This is not a generalization. I don't mean any disrespect to teachers, but this is what I've noticed. When you bring a practitioner, an MD, a CEO, a CMO, a CXO in the classroom, the way he teaches, what he's going to teach, in fact, is going to be what he's going to hire for. And that's why placements become very easy for us. Because all our teachers are practitioners. Our campus is actually situated in a commercial building. We share that office space with BCG, with Gartner, with Bank of America. They're in the same building as us.
This is a great model for education in general and EdTech in general.
Yes.
If you can give people real world exposure, they just become better students, faster students.
Let me put it this way: when companies hire for a role, they make you go through a 6-month training period. They're spending money to train you. What was the college doing? So in fact, many of our courses are the same courses that companies actually teach their new hires. And that makes their placement incredibly easy for us. We actually don't work very hard on placements.
Dude, what's taught in modern MBA colleges in India? Like what's taught in an IM, ABC? And what's the hype?
Yeah, I think the hype is the legacy. The track record, because they just got the best students and they made them better, slightly better, right?
I just want to put a disclaimer that this is not a MBA diss. I've studied for CAT myself when I was in engineering college, and it was the one exam in India. I've also studied for JEE. JEE tests your physics, maths, your science skills. CAT tests how smart you are.
Right.
And it teaches you better English, it teaches you better mathematics, it teaches you better logic, and it teaches you better viewpoints on current affairs. So the people who get through CAT, including the interview rounds, they are actually like sort of a cream crowd in terms of intellect. Coming to what you're saying now.
Right. Let's say you were studying MBBS, and you were never given a cadaver to do real studies on, or you were never like allowed to see real patients. You would not become nearly as good of a doctor if you did all of those things, right? I think that's what's happening in business schools today. And I will not just talk about IIMs, just talking business schools in general, that they're teaching you all the theory and they're teaching you really well, right? And there are some teachers who will make it very interesting, all of that, but they're not teaching you experientially. They're not teaching you how accounting comes to life and why it's important. They won't make you run real marketing campaigns. They won't make you, start a business by yourselves in the college, right? Yeah. You'll have to just make those mistakes later on.
Correct me if I'm wrong. And this is the entrepreneur in me speaking. My co-founders and myself, when we have to deal with MBAs in business deals, and this is just my experience, and it might be very kind of narrow-sighted, and I'm not speaking for all MBAs. But jitne MBAs we have worked with, we notice that sometimes, often, they think in boxes in terms of a campaign. If they've set their mind on something or their mind on a certain strategy, there's a sense of, no, obviously only this will work. Nothing else can work. Correct. So they're not able to kind of see it from a different perspective. And I'm assuming that it's the outcome of the Indian education system. I don't know. Have you noticed anything like this? Because, I mean, you've seen like worldwide education.
No, I think worldwide, and especially in India, we are told to believe what we are taught. We are not told to question what we are taught, right? And so that's why we have this mindset of, this conformist mindset that, okay, this is how the teacher will say, this is how the campaign is going to work. So this is how it's going to work, right? And that's going to work for the rest of my life, right? And so to regularly sort of question yourself is not something that we are taught in colleges. And I think that's true for the world, right? And true for education system in general. I think maybe in Norway, Sweden, in Japan, where the education systems are like, really high in terms of outcomes, maybe there it's different. I haven't experienced that.
What's the deal there? Why is it like so superior?
Yeah, I have no idea. Actually, I haven't experienced it, so I can't say. But I keep hearing that Norway, Sweden, Japan, like their students, when they're like at age 12, age 13, like they perform like much, much better than their Indian American counterparts, right? For some reason, those colleges, the way they sort of make people think, or the way they sort of teach people how to think is very different from the way we are taught how to think, right? I'll give an example. Like in Chinese, the way they do math in their head is very different because when we say 22 plus 31, right? In our minds, we are doing 22 plus 31, right? And that's like 50. Okay. In China, when the way 22 is said is Arsha Er. Arsha Er, right? That means 2, 10, 2. They're not saying 22. Do you see what I'm trying to say here?
Yeah.
And when they say 11, they don't say 11, they say Shi, 10, 1. So when they do their mathematics, it's not 22 into 11 or 22 plus 31, whatever I said. It's actually 2, 10, 1 times 3, 1. Right? So it's fundamentally the thing differently.
Which basically means when they're approaching problems, they break it down to the ABCs of the problem.
Correct.
Likely, because that's what they've trained their minds to
That's
do.
it, yeah.
In ancient India, there used to be this subject called Anvikshiki, which basically is design thinking, looking
Okay.
at
Oh, wow.
something
Okay.
and asking yourself, why is it this color? How can I improve it? Why does that cup feel like this on my mouth? Can I design it in such a way that it'll feel better?
Correct.
Can it transfer less heat?
Correct.
So Anvikshiki is design thinking. And this was taught to like every kid as their first subject in their Gurukul. So their junior KG subject was Anvikshiki before they're taught any other subject, so that they create a mind in order to question whatever they're being taught.
Correct.
So if you're being taught geography, the question, the way you would look at it is not, oh, these are how these rocks have developed. The question will be, why didn't they develop in another way?
Correct.
So I'm assuming that
There you go.
the
There you go.
way-
I mean, we did it in the past, right?
yeah. So
think-
I mean,
It's also, I mean, we are a country of like 1 billion people, right? We need education systems that work for everybody. We have large classrooms. We have, you know, it's harder for us to do justice to those. Norway, Sweden have that privilege
Yeah.
that school mein bacche kitne hain,
yeah, 100%.
right? And so maybe in a Gurukul system where probably what was the student ratio in a Gurukul?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, one teacher and maybe 20 students.
students, right.
But in saying that, we live in the age of tech. We live in the age when the metaverse is coming up.
True.
God knows how that's going to change up scales. Like I remember Kunal Shah said this on this podcast, that very soon the best teachers are going to come to the forefront, because now that one to many angle will really come through.
Sure.
Like in terms of in a classroom, what the max number of students you'll address is 100,
Sure.
200.
Correct.
But what about with like technology?
Hmm.
Does it suddenly become 1 lakh, 2 lakh? But from that professor you spoke about.
Yeah, correct.
Oh.
But here's the thing, right? There has been no innovation in education, right?
Technologically.
No, just even with technology, I think there's been no innovation in education. Think about it for a second. In Oxford, Cambridge were built in 1100 AD, right? And at that time, they set up this concept where there's a stage and then there are students looking at the stage with the teacher speaking to them, right? The teacher is writing something on the board. The students are taking notes. It's been 1,000 years, right? We are still doing the same thing. In 1700, 1800, when the printing press came in, they said books are here. Now that the books have come, the teachers are redundant. Why do you need teachers? People can just read, right? Did that happen? No. Teachers became even more important and more integral because you needed somebody to explain the books, right? Now we have videos, right? And we have had videos for 60 years now. We had TVs in 60 years. And that time, also people thought that with books and TVs, why do you need schools? Why do you need teachers? Right? And now that we have YouTube, we are still saying, why do we need teachers? We have YouTube, we have one too many, we have all of this. But still, we need teachers. So my point is that the technology has slightly just changed the medium, right? From in-person to online, sure. But still the way we are taught is the same with somebody telling us something. I think the real innovation in education will come when the fundamentals of somebody just listening to somebody changes.
What do you mean?
When education becomes more experiential, right? Instead of me just reading a book, seeing a video, or watching a teacher give a lecture, unless I interact with the content, where I become the content, where I become the subject, only then will education truly transform, right? You cannot take the teacher out of the system, that's for sure, right? I mean, after pandemic, we've done online education. We all want to come back, right? That's because education is so much more than just consuming content. It's about living the content. It's about, let me give you an example. We play games, right? We play games. And there are some people who would play games for like 6 hours, 7 hours stretch. You ask those same people, can they study for 6 hours, 7 hours stretch? Probably not, right? It's because games are engaging you, right? They're sort of, sort of hooking you essentially. Why can't education hook you? It will once education becomes like a game, right? when it becomes fun, when it becomes something that you're actively participating in, not just listening to somebody. I think that will be the true transformation of education, not video.
Do you see that happening soon with the metaverse?
Again, I think metaverse is again just a medium, right? From books to TV to YouTube to metaverse. Unless the instructional style changes, it doesn't matter what the medium is.
Are you keeping up with what's happening with Neuralink?
A little bit, but
So Neuralink, basically Elon has built
Correct.
a chip which fixes all the brain problems which were thought of as unfixable earlier. That's what he claims. And they're starting clinical trials now. Parallelly, there's a company called Synchron which has developed some technology which allows you to write text with just your thoughts. And they've already done this with this one person who was paralyzed, who was able to
Wow.
tweet using just his thoughts. So this is the first layer of the Neuralink technology.
Sure.
But what science fiction people like myself like to believe is that eventually we're going to go into a place where, have you seen that Dexter's Laboratory episode where
Yeah.
he wears that device and then he goes omelette du fromage?
correct.
Where basically you put a device in your head and there's a transfer of data. Because what is data? It's bits, right? Like at the end of the day. As in if you, again, I don't want to go into the details of what bits are. But anything you type out on a computer, if you type out an A on a computer or a B or any
The
letter,
back is zeros and ones.
yeah, it's the back end is just zeros and ones, which effectively means there's a tiny electronic circuit in that computer, which every time it reads a 1, it's sending a pulse, and every time it reads 0, it's not sending a pulse.
Correct.
And therefore, from counting the number of pulses, super fast computing power is able to say, oh, this person pressed that button, and this, because of the number of pulses, we read it as an A. Okay. Now, because of advancements in neuroscience as well, people are trying to figure out how to, I'm assuming this is the technology behind Neuralink. You're trying to map out the computer within your mind.
The electrical impulses, you're trying to basically read that signal. Yeah.
Exactly.
So when I'm thinking of A, what does that mean in a sine curve?
Exactly. Now, if your brain can send out those thoughts and become a tweet, which has already happened in 2022,
Correct.
Why can't it be the other way?
Oh yeah, for sure. We can program our brains out from the outside, and
Maybe that's what, which is dangerous. It's a little up, but
it's a whole new meaning to terrorism.
Yeah.
Or anything for that matter.
What do you mean by, like, break down that thought?
I'm just thinking, like, if I want to like influence you, I would just throw out these waves, and suddenly you, first of all, have become educated, or uneducated, or fanatic, or fascist, or NASA, whatever, like
Yeah. Which is so we had Saket Modi, who's a cybersecurity expert, and he was talking to me about just the concept of cybersecurity. The way it works is a cat and mouse game that cybersecurity experts will make an extremely secure system. Hackers will learn how to hack it. And then the cybersecurity experts have to make a deeper system.
Correct.
And vice versa.
Hackers will be one step ahead, obviously.
Yeah. Vice versa. Ki if the hackers have gone ahead, then cybersecurity people need to chase them, etc. Creates a lot of crazy scenarios here. But maybe the technological revolution you're speaking in education is this omelette du fromage device.
Possibly. I mean, that would be the ultimate, right? That would be the ultimate. But I think before that, there are some very basic things we can do.
Okay.
Just make our education more experiential. I mean, I just can't say that enough.
Which is your hospital analogy?
Exactly. The MBBS colleges are already doing that, right? Like, they don't teach you where the heart is in a body by looking at some, diagram. They actually cut open the human body. They show, okay, dekho, yahan pe hai. And take it out and, do it with your hands, etc. In automobile engineering colleges in India, I don't think there's an actual automobile there.
The closest thing we're taught in engineering colleges is we have a subject called workshop where we're taught how to use old school machinery.
Correct. That is so sad, right? Like, you're going to an engineering school to work on one course is workshop, and people love that class, by the way. Everything should be a workshop. The engineering school should be inside a factory.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Right? Like, every automobile engineering course should happen inside the Maruti factory.
Yeah. So before BeerBiceps, I interned in my, I have like my extended family business, which is an engineering based business. Going there taught me so much about life. One was that it could be an incredibly complex engineering problem, but if you understand the fundamentals and get to it, you'll be able to solve it. Two, there was this person who actually ran the factory, and he wasn't an engineer. He was a 10th grade pass who had just taught himself engineering.
There you go.
And that's
real. That's
a
real.
Truth of the world I learned before YouTube started.
There was, this research done, right, which found out that people who are self-taught programmers are actually better programmers
Yeah.
than programmers who have done computer science in their college.
Yeah,
Right?
100%.
Because they've sort of explored it themselves, and they've made all the mistakes, and they've learned from their mistakes. They just didn't go and see a presentation in a class.
So in the companies that actually get the highest pay packages to Masters Union, first of all, which are the companies that have the highest pay packages, and what are they looking for in those candidates?
Yeah, I think.
Feel free to name drop just by
Yeah,
the way.
yeah. It's, let's. I think there are three kinds of companies, right? One is companies who sell their brand name to their clients, right? McKinsey, Bain, BCG, they sell trust. Right? If you come to us, you'll get the best consulting there ever was, right?
And consulting will teach you about the world of business in general.
Yeah. So I mean, this is for their clients, right? So for example, McKinsey wants to get, let's say, Reliance as a client, and so Reliance will be like, McKinsey ko hire kar lo, unko sab pata hai.
Could you give the listeners some context on what consultancy firms do?
Oh, sure, of course. So basically, what happens is that we have these firms called consulting firms that work for large businesses like Reliance, like Aditya Birla, like Airtel, etc., and they help them basically either earn more money or reduce their costs, right? So they can make more profit. And these consulting firms are able to give an outside perspective to these companies, right? These companies know their business well, but sometimes an outside perspectives makes them rethink their fundamentals, right? So that's why they hire very expensive firms like McKinsey, Bain, BCG, PwC. You would have heard all of these names, Accenture, to come in and basically help them improve their efficiencies.
So I have a lot of friends who worked in
I'm
these
sure.
firms, and they're some of my most intelligent friends, just by the
Right.
way. Many kind of graduates from these firms, as in they've spent their time as consultants.
Yeah.
They become entrepreneurs eventually.
Correct.
Like, because they've just got such a wide understanding of business.
Different businesses. Yeah.
They basically, it's kind of like a higher education you do, but practically it's your hospital analogy.
Exactly.
Which gives them input into, maybe these businesses will work out if I try them.
In fact, one of my friends tells me who's working in Bain, he's like, this is like the true MBA.
Yeah.
This is the true MBA. I'm working with real people, real data, real problems.
Also, the flip side of this is I had like one of my closest friends in the world, Neeraj Chitnis. He worked there, and he once told me that it's great and you get to learn an incredible amount and you get professional exposure.
And get paid for it.
Yeah, and you get paid. And you get that that tag on your CV.
Correct.
That, I'm a Bain consultant. But it's basically you validating what your clients have already pitched. As in, you have to study what they have, what they think is the right way to do business, and then you add layers onto that.
Correct.
So that's effectively what the world of consultants is. But now, again, going back to that first question,
Right.
What do they look for in these highly chased candidates?
I think first is, like very strong communication skills. You can't do without them because you have to present to clients essentially, right? And you're exuding confidence and trust. That's one. But the second is that, are these students able to think in a structural fashion, right? So let's say I throw a problem at you. Why is Congress not winning in the rest of the country other than like a few states, right? And you'll say, oh, because Rahul Gandhi is this, oh, because this is this, right? That's layer one thing. That's unstructured thinking, right? You're just basically shooting in the dark. But then there are some people who would break down that problem. Okay, let's talk about it state by state. Let's talk about it community by community. Let's look at the numbers, how those numbers have changed over the last few years, right? How much vote share they had in 2012, how much vote share they had in 2015, how much. That's breaking down the problem and thinking structurally. I think most of these consulting firms, and even other companies, I think they want people who can think in a structural fashion, who can break down the problems in a defined way and then go solve them. Because that's how the real world solves problems, right? So I think the first thing that we teach at Masters Union, I think what a lot of other business schools try to teach, is a sense of structured thinking, right? So communication, structured thinking, and I think finally is a deep sense of curiosity / ambition, right? Where I want to okay, now I have this problem that I can think structurally about. I need to be motivated to and I need to be curious enough to actually go deep and investigate and find the answer. So they want people who don't give up easily on finding answers, right? So I threw a question at you. Yeah, what makes why is there so much pollution in Bombay? We have sea breeze and land breeze. There shouldn't be no pollution, right? And then I've put that seed in you. Now, are you motivated enough to do Google searches and figure out the answers and not sleep? Sometimes it happens. We can't sleep. Quick question comes in our mind. We have to find the answer. Do you have that in you? right? To be able to go down deep, investigate. I think these are the few things that most high impact roles, high impact companies are looking for in their high impact roles, right? So, for example, we had Microsoft come and hire, right? And they want product managers, right? And the way they do their interviews, exactly this, right? They'll give you a problem. They're like, okay, we want the conversion rate in our Microsoft Teams product to increase from 6% to 20%. Go. And then they'll just see how you think, right? Is it structured, right? Did you ask questions to them asking for more data, right? All of those things are basically, that's what MBA teaches you, structured thinking, I think.
So there's a lot of kids watching this till this point, placing themselves in those job interviews and asking you what is the X factor required beyond what you've already said.
Yeah, I think, I might be repeating myself here a little bit, right? But I think curiosity, if you have a passion to find answers, right? If you just don't give up easily on questions, right? And if you ever have felt yourself staying up at night thinking deeply about something, ye kaise karna hai? Could be anything. Could be like asking a girl out, right? And you'll get rejected, but you ask again. Get rejected, but you ask again. But every time you ask, you learn something from your past experience and grow, right? You don't give up easily. I think if you have that X factor, ki karna hai, like giving up is not an option. Like no is not an option, right? Till the time you're completely like, okay, fine, now it's like, I think if you have that, then all these other things will just come naturally, right? Because if you feel like, okay, I'll give you an example. Last year when we started the college, we told ourselves we have to beat IIM Ahmedabad and ISB. We just told ourselves, the entire team, there was very, very clear goal that I gave to the team that we have to beat it. Now let's figure out a way to do it, right? And everyone had full clarity of thought. So now here we are, 30 very intelligent people, have a shared common goal, and they're going at it, right? And as like, we're not gonna give up. So first, obviously, everyone was like, when we went to these companies and we said, hey, you should come recruit from Masters Union, they're like, who the hell are you? We are going to these colleges and we are very happy, right? And then we had to like give them, no, you should still come. Why this is this? They still said no. Then we're like, okay, why don't you just take some interns? They're like, still no. They're like, why don't you take some freelancers, our students? Just take them as freelancers. Just see how they are. They're like, no. I was like, at least can you come for dinner? Just come for dinner. Just talk to the students. That's all I'm asking you. Maybe you will be impressed, right? So that one person opened up the doors like, okay, fine. I'll come. I'll address the students for like 30 minutes. He comes. He was very impressed by some of the questions that students asked. And we had prepped the students properly, just ask good questions. And he's like, okay, fine, I'll interview one kid. I'll give it to you. Like, daya kar diya unhone wahan pe. Right? But that kid did well, right? And we had worked very hard on that kid. And then from there, sort of, you fight every challenge, like one after the other. But we never just gave up, right? So if you have this like sense of clarity of goal and this hunger that I have to get to that goal, I think that's enough. All the problems will solve themselves.
That's the play in EdTech, like in terms of every business and every industry has its play. Can you do this? For example, in the agency business, it's speed. Can you deliver fast and good quality fast? Everyone delivers good quality. Can you do it faster than the rest? In EdTech, I feel the play is, can you place me after I sign up for your EdTech course?
Correct.
In education in general.
In education in general.
Will you give
outcomes,
me a good
outcomes?
What's your outcome of this education?
Correct.
Keeping that in mind, is the EdTech space still booming? Is the education space still booming in India? Like, because I know not at the start of the pandemic, probably a couple of years prior to the pandemic, there was this phase where EdTech was the industry, and then it just really took off during the pandemic.
Yeah.
What's up in that space now?
I think education is always booming, right? It's like healthcare. It's always going to be booming, right? You'll have certain spurts because of which it'll boom a little bit more than everything else, and that's why everyone will talk about it. But in the larger scheme of things, like last year's, it was in the conversation because some companies raised some money and some companies got sold, and that's why it's on the news, right? But if you think about it, we spend I think some 200 billion in education. And so even if some company raised 1 billion, 2 billion, that's a 1% blip, right? So I think education is always booming. In India right now, the gross enrollment ratio, that means the ratio of number of people who graduate class 12 and go into college, is only 30%.
So 70% stop after class 12.
Stop after class 12, right? So that 70% is basically an open market, right? And every year we are adding 1 or 2%, right? We're adding 1 or 2%. And on the backs of these 70% people who are yet to be enrolled in colleges, obviously EdTech will flourish. Okay, that's number one metric. And I'll give you another metric. There are only 250,000, 2.5 lakh, 2.5 lakh PhDs in India who are teaching. You know how many students there are in India?
How many?
36 million, 3.6 crores. That means we have one PhD for 130 students.
36 million is
3.6 crores.
Okay. Right. Okay. Yeah, correct.
Right. So almost 2.5 lakh teachers for 3.6 crore students. That's 1:150 ka ratio. Right. And our UGC, our AICT, they all declare the fact that you cannot teach unless you are a PhD. Right. So what that basically means is that we are learning in a ratio of 1:150. Right? When the recommended ratio in Gurukul was how much? 1:10, right? Or in the US, it's also like 1:10, 1:12. So that's flawed. So obviously that's why EdTech will have to come in and solve for that.
Regional EdTech?
Of course, yeah.
As in those 70% kids who aren't kind of taking up 12th standard ke baad education, they would prefer to be taught in Tamil or Punjabi or whatever, Assamese.
Correct.
I probably see regional EdTech as the next big wave.
Yeah, so the thing is that it's already happening, right? There are these like local universities that teach in vernacular, right? We don't hear about it because they don't raise $200 million from like large VCs, right? But they exist, right? And so that content is there. When EdTech will sort of come there, it will also have its light under the sun. The problem is that they might not be able to pay as much as the urban English student, you know? So when, that's why for the EdTech companies, they're like, let's target the low-hanging fruit first. These kids who can pay us. And then eventually we'll go after, even like a Byju, is a large company, it targets like rich people.
Could you talk a little bit about Byju's? You're from the education space. Talk about it freely, whatever you want to say about it. What is the deal with it? Why is there so-called negative PR around it? What's the scene?
I sympathize with the founders of Byju. I think they're doing a great job, right? They're making educational content accessible, and they're not forcing you to buy it. I understand why some people might feel that they're coercing you into buying that, and they're using these like sales tactics. And I'm sure certain percentage of people are affected or impacted by it negatively. But I think by and large, people buy into it because they feel there is a need, because our schools don't do justice to certain subjects. Not all our teachers are as good as our students deserve, right? So when Byju's comes with their product, I think it's doing a big service. When some company is growing so fast, obviously you'll have some detractors, right? You'll have some naysayers, right? And sometimes they'll be in the media, and sometimes their narrative, will take over. But I think by and large, they're well-intentioned people, right? And doing a good job, making very good content that students genuinely enjoy. Of course, there'll be 5% people who don't enjoy, right? And I think they just speak a little bit more loudly than the 95% who do enjoy, right? So, think about it. Yeah, they have, let's say you go to a classroom, right? And it's an 8 a.m. class. Sometimes you slept late at night, right? You were not paying attention in that 8 a.m. class. So you did not understand the concepts taught in that 8 a.m. class. That basically means that you've lost the opportunity to learn that concept. But because of Byju's or Khan Academy or YouTube or any of these things, I think you're given a second chance. So I think that's incredibly, helpful. Now, insofar as their selling tactics go, I think every company uses selling tactics that can be questioned. I think LIC, they just put so much fear into you that you have to purchase LIC, but nobody questions them. Right? They say, oh, like, my husband will die, I have to buy health insurance. Like, come on, yeah, that's also no way of selling a product, right? Cigarettes, right? No, I mean, people do question it, sure. Yeah. But I think Byju's gets questioned too much.
Yeah, it's that whole thing about, okay, whatever industry or person or group of people are on top, what's the chink in the armor? And everyone enjoys seeing the champion fall.
And also, yeah, when you think about YouTube, right? Like, or when you think about media, the negative news will always get more clicks. Truth about IITs, right? That will get so many more views than IIT published this research report that might change animal husbandry industry forever. Nobody's gonna click on that. Truth about IIT.
Yeah, it's a
suicides in IIT. Come on.
Fear, darkness, and this dark curiosity is an angle even we use for thumbnails, dude. And it's something we figured over time, but the success ratio was so much more kind of important than, I'm just packaging this normal piece of content as dark or fearful, that we just kind of went ahead with it. It's a good conversation about education and the education system. And dude, I want to talk to the entrepreneur in you. And I feel that you're an extremely entrepreneurial dude. And what I mean by that is not that, you're business oriented. I feel that entrepreneurial mindsets are all about going to the bottom of things, breaking down the ABCs, accumulating new experiences. And if you can talk to a true entrepreneur about any subject, and they'll kind of approach it in the same way, outside and then journey in. A friend of mine, Fareen Ahmed, do you know who she is? She's an Instagram creator, does a lot of tech stuff. She told me this thing, and this is while I was dating this one gorgeous girl, okay, who was from the media industry, just mad beautiful. That girl was so gorgeous, I can't explain. But somewhere over the course of dating her over 3 to 6 months, I realized looks isn't everything. And I wasn't able to have the conversation with her that basically you and me had outside.
Yeah, I get it.
So what I mean by that is I wasn't able to go deep in a conversation with her. Once randomly I was talking to Fareen about some work stuff, and she asked me what's up in your love life. I said that, there's this girl who's just the best looking girl I've met in my life, but I don't see it going anywhere because I'm not able to connect with her on a conversational level. So Fareen said that, dude, you're extremely entrepreneurial. She didn't say you're an entrepreneur. She said you're entrepreneurial. The kind of conversations you just require as a person, you have to have someone who is entrepreneurial near you at all times. You won't be able to date people who are not entrepreneurial, and you won't be able to have
friends.
Long-term friendships with people who are not entrepreneurial. And you're one of the most entrepreneurial minds I've come across. I also ended up breaking up with that girl.
I'm glad. I
I
love the way you do. She was so gorgeous.
Dude, she was mad gorgeous. She was one of those girls where, if she's at a party, the entire party would look and ask everyone, who's that girl?
I hope she's not watching this.
Sorry if you're watching this. But just there was a disconnect because she was from a different kind of industry. I'm from a different kind of industry. And she was also clean-hearted. Everything was there, but I wasn't able to have conversation. So
and now you're compensating. She was clean-hearted.
She was damn clean-hearted, man. She was spiritual and clean-hearted. my point is,
that one negative comment.
I enjoyed the out of the conversation outside as well. What is this whole entrepreneurial spirit thing for you? Because I feel it's kind of been invoked in people because of Shark Tank India.
Yeah.
So Shark Tank India has been a fucking amazing curveball, dude, because entrepreneurs weren't given that much importance, and then suddenly now everyone gives a shit about entrepreneurship in this country.
It's exciting.
People are recommending that we bring on entrepreneurs on the show. We had a whole phase in 2020 where we brought on entrepreneurs, and people were like, this is so boring, it's too businessy, get other people. Now everyone's like, where's the entrepreneurs? Yeah. And I'm just like, thank you, Shark Tank India.
I know, right? It's amazing what it's done.
It's genuinely the best conversations.
Right. True.
I wish I could bring on entrepreneurs for every episode.
Let me give you an example. I think this is, Punjab has a population of, I think, 2 crores, right? Or let's say Nagpur has a population of probably 80 lakhs, 60 lakhs, right? What's the population of Israel? I think 40 lakhs. Okay. And you know how many companies get founded in Israel every year? Shit tons. I think they raise as much money as at least until 2 years ago, as the entire country of India. Those 40 lakhs people. So obviously they're very entrepreneurial. So the question obviously is, why are they so entrepreneurial? Right? Why are there so many companies coming out of this one country of 40 lakh people as there are from entire continents, right? In the comparison with Australia or something, right? And the reason for that is that those people, Jews essentially and Israelis, they have grown up with missiles falling all around them. They were always under attack, right? And they've always moved from Germany to Israel, from all over so they've always been traveling, and they've been sort of under, so much stress. And so for them, starting a business is no risk because they've always been at the edge of the life.
The relationship with risk is different.
It's a relationship. It's like so comfort. They're very comfortable with risk, right? And so that's why in just 40, 50 lakh people, you have such amazing, tech companies get founded, right? Amazing agri-tech companies get founded. I think it's because they just like live. And even in India for that matter, right? India used to get attacked always from the northwest frontier, right? That's Punjab. And if you see, like in the, maybe 6, 7 decades ago, Punjab was the most entrepreneurial state, right? It's so I think there's something, as I think you use a very good word, which is relationship with risk. I think that does define an entrepreneurial mindset, right? If you've had a very comfortable life all throughout, if you've not, I feel like people who change schools a lot, they are very entrepreneurial because they have to always like adjust themselves. They always have to like, make new friends, and they always have to be like active.
Yeah, active. Dude, when the pandemic had broken out, I'd actually spoken to Fareen only about like just general. It was the same conversation where she convinced me to break up with that girl. But another aspect of that conversation was I asked her, because she's extremely connected in the Startup India network.
Yeah.
So I asked her, what's the general scene with startups across? She said that you'd assume that people are feeling sad because business owners have pressure. Everyone's got a boner right now. Because entrepreneurs love challenges. Like the real entrepreneurial spirits want that challenge to be thrown at them, and they'll tackle it in their own way and therefore make the business work. Kunal Shah also, I think he said that the point of becoming smart eventually is to execute it in the real world and showcase it as business. Otherwise, you're a, what's it called, keyboard warrior or whatever. That's the point of intellect for many people. Me, for some people, it's like, oh, I just want to pass on the knowledge, or I just enjoy like the process of accumulating knowledge. But for most human beings, there is a need to do something with that knowledge. And I just feel Shark Tank India has nudged people along those lines that, okay, if you thought business is risky, by the way, there's this concept of investors. I'm sure there's a lot of people who didn't know about the concept of raising money, giving off a bit of your equity for that money. Again, keeping that in mind, I don't watch much Shark Tank International. I've not even seen one episode of Shark Tank India. I asked an entrepreneur friend of mine, Ayush Jaiswal, what do you think of it? And he was telling my team that it's incredible for culture. It's an incredible show. But usually businesses don't give away 50% of their equity.
It's for... It's dramatized a little bit.
Have you watched the show?
Yeah, I have. Yes.
What do you think of it?
I think so. Like, if you want to start a tech business, like if you're like a Bangalore dude who wants to start a tech business, or you're an engineer, don't take a lot of guidance from Shark Tank, right? Because I think as you mentioned, nobody gives up 50% of their business. Like the way the valuations work, that's not how real world actually functions in terms of fundraising or valuations, right? However, do watch it for the spirit, right? The spirit of, like, when you look at those people, right, and the way they pitch, there is so much emotion in that pitch. There is so much like zeal and enthusiasm in that pitch. Watch it for that, right? You'll be able to spot an entrepreneur if you watch Shark Tank enough, right? You'll also be able to understand how investors think, right? So, for example, one of the investors, she always says that I want more, so like she's like, okay, I'll give you 10%.
Who is this?
I forget the name. The MCure Pharmaceuticals woman, right?
The pharma
queen, yeah. Namita Thapar, I think, right? So what she always tells is like, she says, I'll give you, 30 lakhs for 10%. And the guy's like, no, ma'am, 30 lakhs for 5%. She's like, no, don't you want me to be invested in your business so that I go to any length to help you? Right? And so now suddenly we have understood how an investor thinks. So when you tomorrow go to, an investor, you'll know already how they think, right? So you understand the spirit, you understand the thought process, but don't watch it for the mechanics of how fundraising works and how all these things work.
Yeah, no. In saying that, I'm completely on the same page as you. But we needed some cultural event to spark off that in middle class India and in the interiors of the country. There's so many families watching the show together. It was so difficult for me to convince my parents I want to do business in life. Like my dad just called me into his cabin one day in my final year of engineering and told me, no, you're going to do an MBA in finance. And I'm setting up your path to be able to do it.
Correct. In the 40s and 50s, the Indian media and the Bollywood industry created heroes out of civil servants, military leaders, right? 70s, 80s, it became bankers and all of these, right? And now finally, the entrepreneur is becoming the hero, right? And that's why I think more parents are going to allow, hopefully in the future, their kids to experiment with entrepreneurship. I think, and Shark Tank has really done a very good job of making the entrepreneur the hero, the investors the supporting actor, the supporting heroes, right? I think it's very exciting.
America's had that culture for a while, which is also why you see so much more personal branding there, so much more business in general, so much more risk taking. That, and I'm assuming that Israel does have some sort of a trickle down culture from all the Jews living in America.
Possibly.
Maybe
Possibly.
there has to be
For
some
sure.
element of.
I think there's also another thing, which is that all of the people in Israel have to do military service, right? So I think that exposes them to even more risk, right?
Yeah.
So it's possibly that.
What's your vibe about where you want to take your entrepreneurial career, dude?
Yeah, I think I get a high when students who have studied in Masters Union, get the outcome that they truly deserve and they want. I think that high is incredible, right? It's the best high one can ever experience, and I just want to experience this forever, right?
I'm gonna phrase something terribly, and then tell you what the phrase means.
Okay.
But what about what about your penis?
Yeah.
What about why are you doing it for the man inside you?
Interesting. Okay. I think like we get happiness from different things, right? And I think you have different phases in life. And so there's a phase in life where you get happiness from, impressing girls. That everyone goes through that, right? And then there's a time in your life where you get happiness from earning money, right? There's a time in your life when you get happiness from working out and building like a strong body. There's a time in your life when you get happiness when, you have a child and when you're nurturing for that child. And then eventually when you're 50, 60, you'll have a time in your life when you get joy and happiness by giving your money away, right? Philanthropy, etc., right? So I think everyone has different phases. So right now I'm in a phase where, I'm getting a lot of happiness by helping students, really achieve their goals, right? I think maybe in my previous few years of life, I think definitely the penis was
at the forefront.
At the forefront, and I've done stuff there for sure.
Every guy's got to go through that war, man.
Correct. And I think and you should wait for that phase to get over before you commit to a woman or to a man, right?
100%.
Don't think with your penis.
Yeah, 100%. But also, okay, speaking about just bodies and minds and development in general, open water swimming.
Okay.
I know this is a extreme gear shift.
No, it's cool.
But this is a question I wanted to ask you since this podcast began. In fact, when you told me outside about open water swimming, dude, I was like, I need to hear this.
Yeah.
Because even with entrepreneurs, you usually hear the same narratives and then there's some key points which are fucking weirdly different. And that was your fucking weirdly different angle. Yeah. Which is also what I recommend listeners of the podcast who've listened till this point to think about. That what is your, I won't call it X factor because that's more like kind of, skill set based. I'd say what is this weird angle in your life? What's the weirdness in you?
What's the weird?
I find it cool,
yeah,
but really strange that you like open water swimming, dude. And what is open water swimming?
Yeah. I mean, swimming in general and open water swimming is just swimming in the sea, in the salty sea, right?
You've had experiences there?
Yeah, of course. Very interesting experiences. But at the core, what people call meditation, or for some, what is meditation? For me, it's swimming. Right? I know you are into meditation a lot, right? It's incredible. And for me, when I'm swimming, I'm in a zone. Right? When I started swimming, I was in a competitive zone, right? I was tracking who's in front of me, who's behind me, what is my timing, all of that, right? Eventually, swimming just started giving me this bliss, which I cannot experience like in normal life, right? For you, when you see me swimming, you might see that's 10 minutes, 20 minutes. For me, there is no sense of time. It's like a time machine, essentially, right? And I feel like some of the best ideas, some of the best campaigns, some of the best thoughts I've had, some of the best decisions I've taken in my life have been when I was swimming, because at that moment, I'm weightless, I'm lifeless, I'm in the space, right? And I think many entrepreneurs and very entrepreneurially minded people have this sense of, have something where they experience life without, as if life has no other variables, right? It's just you and your consciousness.
Can I give you the neuroscience on this?
Please.
So we had neuroscientists on the show and I spoke to them about meditation, which is my swimming, my activity. They one of them called Dr. Balan Jalal, he compared meditation to sort of kind of what happens in dreams. So imagine that all your sensory activities in the day, this conversation, the problem you're solving on your phone right now, your conversations with your girl, whatever. Okay, that's data, and your data is getting processed by the computer inside your skull. Okay, but it gets processed by the logical part of that computer. Now imagine that there's this other emotional part of the computer, which only gets turned on when you're in your state of flow, which is when you're doing a creative activity, when possibly you're in a state of flow in a physical activity, when you're meditating, or when you're dreaming. So the same data gets transferred there, and it's kind of like a second person inside you that's seeing the same data,
Consultant in your head.
but in an emotional way. I'd probably call it like, they say everyone has masculine energy and feminine energy. The masculine energy part is everyone's logical mind, which is then women as well. So it goes to your feminine energy part. You're able to see
Men are
it.
from Mars, women are from Venus.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense. I get it. So
And that's why sometimes you get solutions in your dreams, or you just,
that's amazing.
when you wake up, you look at problems differently.
Right.
Because the data has been processed, and then it comes back to the logical part, and you can make better sense of it.
That's why sleep over an idea.
Yeah.
That's where it comes from, probably, right? Okay, got it. So, I mean, just to paraphrase that, what you're trying to say is that if I'm not able to solve a problem at night, right? समझ नहीं आ रहा है ये math problem, ये business problem, sleep over it. Your emotional side will get activated. Will look at that problem differently, right? In the morning, you'll come, wake up fresh and look at that problem very differently from the emotional angle as well. And then find a creative solution, right? That the otherwise couldn't.
I've swam in my life as well, and I feel the same about pools in general.
Yeah.
There was a long phase where nowadays it's football for my cardio, which is also the same, dude. It does the same.
Of course, yeah.
But swimming used to do that for me as well. It used to help problem solve suddenly. Couldn't make sense of it.
Have you ever noticed, like, when singers are singing, sometimes they just go in that flow, right? Where they shut their eyes and they're just singing. They have no idea what's happening around them. Like AC/DC, right? Or like Led Zeppelin, like when they're just into it. I think that's, I think that's similar. That they are meditating.
Have you seen the movie Soul?
No.
Oh, dude, watch it.
Okay.
The whole movie is based on flow. It's a Pixar movie, and it's the best. It's genuinely become my all-time favorite movie. I watched it again.
Got it.
And the second time I watched it, I was just asking myself, is this my all-time favorite movie? And it was a yes.
Wow.
It used to be Forrest Gump, and this one's gone. This one's gone ahead.
Awesome.
It's a deep ass fucking movie, and it basically visually shows a lot of the stuff I've read in spiritual books, and it's based around flow. The more flow you have in your life, the easier your life will be, because you are living a more spiritual life, and your work, if it can get done in that flow, nothing like it.
For sure.
But speaking about swimming, what about your open water swimming, dude? I'm curious. Have you ever been in danger?
No, not really. I mean, nothing that I couldn't
swam
manage.
at night?
No, I haven't.
Okay. So what's open water swimming like?
So basically what happens is that in a pool, it's a very controlled environment, right? So there is no underwater current in a pool, right? Or even there's not even a current there's no waves, right? So you're not flowing against anything. In open water swimming, it's essentially always a loop, right? It's a lap. So there'll be times when you are swimming with the flow of the water, and there'll be times when you're swimming against the flow of the water, right? And that is a completely different sport than swimming.
Okay.
Right. And it's like a game. It's like a game. So you have to figure out when the flow is in like your favor, then you have to ride the wave. Right. When you're going against the wave, then you have to swim slightly under the water so that the waves, go over you, right? The water temperature in open water actually changes quite a bit every 10 meters, 20 meters. Right. It's not as consistent, right? Depends on what flora and fauna there is, all of that stuff. So when these temperature changes happen, you have to figure out how to manage it on your body, because for one loop, it's all right. But if you're on the 22nd lap loop, it's going to be a big problem, because your body will get confused, what temperature to maintain, what not to maintain. So you have to mentally be aware of where your body is, right? And stop, or change your pace and do all of those things. So it's very scientific, this open water swimming. And it is the highest level of concentration you can ever have. Because if you don't do it properly, your body will give up, right?
And you can die.
Right? I mean, generally there's a lot of like medics around you, so yeah, you probably. But and also most open water swimming is like kilometers long. It's not like 100 meter, 200 meter like swim. It's usually like 1.5 km or 5 km.
So is the joy of it in the focus and concentration?
See, to be very honest, when I started, it was because like I felt like I had a, like I wanted to maintain my body and I hated to like lift, right? So I was like, I'm gonna just swim, and that's gonna help me like keep myself in shape, right? And when I got in shape, I wanted to show it off, right? And so swimming became a great way to, just what you spoke about earlier.
Gotcha.
Got it, right? But I think, but as I was doing it, I realized the spiritual angle. I'm sort of, I've never used the word spiritual angle when it comes to swimming, but or the meditation angle or the
That's my energy
That's-
that's gone
yeah,
into you,
correct,
my
yeah.
man. But go on.
but now it's not about water, and it's not about the stroke, it's not about temperature changes. Now it's just about being in the moment, right? It's just about
Mindfulness.
That's the right word.
There is an angle on mindfulness, like for basically they say mindfulness is either focusing on your breath, a mantra, or an activity. Again, the neuroscience of it is that it triggers a certain part of your brain which is linked again to the emotional side. It's the same logic, being in a state of flow. But yeah, Mr. Mittal, there's like 10 podcasts in you, man.
Okay, great.
Yeah, like you're a born podcaster. That's what I'll say.
No, I think you also ask questions very interestingly, so like it makes you think.
Okay, I'm glad.
Right, and I'm glad you didn't ask me like, okay, like what's happening in Jalandhar and like what's up in. So I think it's also the art of asking the right question.
What would you like not to be asked?
That's a great. I think like anything that what makes a good podcast is, I think, like different layer. If you have different layers of conversation, I think we were at layer 3, layer 4, right? I think we even explored the spiritual angle at layer 5, right? If you just like were swimming at layer 1, where we were like, okay, what are the companies that you follow, or like who are the investors you follow, and like why, like Shark Tank, right? Like, what if you ask me like who's your favorite like judge on Shark Tank? That's not a question that's interesting or engaging, right? But what we spoke about was how Shark Tank is changing people's mindsets and all of that, right? And so that I think,
got it.
Yeah.
You enjoy psychology and shit.
Of course,
Yeah.
Consumer behavior.
Yeah, I fucking think everyone enjoys some form of psychology as they keep growing up, dude.
Yeah.
And again, it's something. So the podcast's big gift to the podcasters that you get to explore psychology and different kinds of psychologies.
True.
So again, like what it does effectively in the long term is that it improves. I don't want to call it psychoanalysis because that's for professionals, but it gives you some version of psychoanalysis. And from the time I saw you, there were two thoughts in my head. One, I'm glad that you're young, or you have a baby face, and I get why you would get all that girl attention. And two, I'm trying to really put as much positive emotion into this, even though the statement might sound negative. I love the harami in you, dude. Like there is this amazing harami in you, which I love talking to because I connect with him. Maybe that's just.
I think we addressed the mirroring right in the beginning. We called spade a spade, right?
Yeah. I think the harami spoke in this podcast, and I'm hoping to have you on the show again, Mr.
Awesome.
Mittal.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
I'm glad you had fun. Thank you, brother. So that was the extremely open conversation on the Ranveer show. These are conversations I look forward to the most. I love spiritual conversations, but sometimes you need a bit of money talk. Sometimes you need a bit of business talk. Sometimes you need a brotherly conversation just like this. I was very drained out on the day that we recorded this, but after Pratham left the studio, I actually felt higher energy levels. I enjoyed this conversation a lot. Felt like I'm talking to a longtime friend. That's the beauty of insight. The more you think about subjects, the deeper you think about subjects, the better a conversationalist you become. I hope you gained from this podcast. If you're considering doing an MBA in your life, rewatch this podcast because this is the truth of the professional world today. And if any of your friends are considering doing an MBA, please share this particular podcast episode with them. I feel it's one of the most crucial episodes of the year. This was Pratham Mittal on The Ranveer Show. Make sure you follow TRS on Spotify. Every episode's available on Spotify 48 hours before it's available anywhere else in the world. I'd love to know from you guys what other topics you'd like broken down on the show when it comes to money, careers, businesses. Lots more coming your way on the 2022 version of The Ranveer Show.